Hey guys, Dango Torres here. Welcome back to another video. And today is November 2nd, 2025. And yes, I'm in my bathrobe. What are you gonna do about it? That means the album comes out in 5 days. Times of Trouble is the name of the album, and it's going to be out on every single streaming platform. I've been hyping up this album since March 14th when I announced it. And there has been so much going on since then. It's been such a journey promoting it. I've gained multiple hundreds of followers since I started promoting it. And it's actually been crazy because I didn't expect the album to, gather attention really at all. But today we're going to talk about this album. We're going to talk about some of my influences behind it, some of the reasons why I wrote this album. It's not so much of a concept album as TBI was, which really, if you think about it, was a concept album. The story spangled around and battered around like a pancake mix. But this is a collection of many times in my life. I'm going to read off this script on my phone here. And I actually wrote this on May 5th, 2025. So this is a 6-month-old script. And I've been wanting to do this video for a long time. I haven't actually been uploading much on YouTube because life gets busy. Life gets in the way of things. You know how it is. Everyone has a life, or hope most of you guys do. Those of you in my comments who are spreading hate comments, though, do not have a life. And you are the reason I wrote Fill the Air. Anyways, this is called Times of Trouble, my next album, in parentheses, video idea. This album isn't just any other album. It's a revelation of things I haven't wanted to share for years since they've happened, due to a multitude of reasons. Haven't processed it, or haven't felt comfortable to share it. This album pushes musical boundaries that I didn't know I had the capability to touch, nevertheless, expand just a couple years ago. My technique has improved, my mind has creatively expanded, and I'm more excited than ever to share this new music with you all. The reason why I named this album Times of Trouble is because this album's songs represent some of the deepest and saddest moments of my life, and even further, ones that have never been shared before. These times are decently spread throughout my life, with some occurring earlier than others. I think one theme that reappears throughout the album is company and loneliness, and my desire for one over the other, which could go both ways. Another theme, of course, is love, more specifically the good and bad trips with love and the things I've sacrificed to try and maintain. Another theme that briefly occurs in this album, specifically on the metal side, is political war issues and societal issues. Drama Queen, my second latest single. Second latest single? Oh my god, this was written May 5th. I hadn't released Can I Wish. Alright, Drama Queen was the first single I released back in January 20th. Let me just get that for context, for you guys who don't know what I'm talking about. It's on YouTube here. It's on every streaming platform. Check it out. But it also will be on the album, and it will sound different on the album because every single I released is going to sound different on the album. You get what I'm saying? Capiche? Capiche. Okay. Political war issues. Drama Queen was written mostly about the audacity politicians in general have to bully the other side in hopes of winning an election as opposed to running a decent campaign and winning that way. I will say this about Drama Queen. I wrote it about a couple things. I wrote it about that, and I also wrote it about the way our society has gotten so soft. Now listen, don't call me a boomer, alright? I'm 16 years old at the time of recording this, although my birthday's on November 20th. By the way, there is a code in the description for my merch store where you can buy at a discounted price select merch items using that code in the description below. It's also right here. So, make sure to check that out. Alright, let's carry on. In this album, I talk about the strain that modern-day American politics puts on society, the potential for war, and the aftermath of war. The album also questions a lot of moral and societal norms of today. These issues have impacted me, whether it be the effects on people affecting my daily interactions, or the indirect impact it has had on those around us. The album is a long album, ranging around 76 minutes long, an hour and 16 minutes. It's also the longest album I've ever recorded. A wide range of genres can be heard in this album, more so than that of TBI at the beginning, which were still great records, but not as diverse, so to speak. Either way, it's something I hope you all will enjoy. I made this album for you all. To love, to laugh, to cry, to empathize with each other as humans, because I believe that's what we all need to do at this point in history. That's the first time I'm reading that, by the way, since I wrote that. What I will say about this album is it's definitely a deep album. It's not under one concept. It's over many different ideas that sort of correlate with each other in a way. They can be put in a Venn diagram together. in most cases. Let's talk about some of the nerdy stuff with this album. All right, I recorded it all sitting in this chair in this little corner of my bedroom here, right, with my Boss Katana, my Shure SM57. If I could get that on frame. This Shure SM57, I recorded most of the vocals and the guitars on here. The bass was recorded through Amplitude 5. No, it was Tonex that it was recorded through. It was recorded through Tonex, using the free bass amp that they give because I did not want to buy Tonex, and I still haven't. And I used MT Power Kit 2 for the drums, and I recorded the drums. I played them on my friend's electric drum kit that he let me borrow. And it was maybe 3 or 4 days at a time that I would borrow his drum kit, and I would sit there and I would try and write these drum parts for the song. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a drummer. I'm not a good drummer. Okay, listen, the stuff you hear on the record is stuff that took me 20, 30 freaking takes to get right, especially on Drama Queen, and the last 3 tracks of the album, last 4 tracks of the album. Jeez. A lot of it was easy. A lot of it was like, okay, well, this is a shuffle, you know, Metro Blues. Sugar Thing is another one that you guys will hear later on. There's a lot of it was pretty simple. Some drum parts, like I have in this song called Cold Weatherman, which is more like a tom groove, which I just sort of went with what I felt was good for that part. The way I started was not writing, but of course all the songs were written as acoustic demos on my phone before I came over here and started laying them down in Reaper, which is the audio interface I use. No, Reaper's a DAW, I'm stupid. And I had the guitar and the vocals tracked first, and then I would put the bass along with that, and based on the bass line, right, lots of bass there, that's how I would play the drums. Now, I have some very interesting takes when it comes to how I play the bass versus how I play the guitar, because I did record every single instrument on here, on this album. The bass is a completely different instrument, in my opinion. I believe that in order to record a good bass line, it has to be different from the guitar part 90% of the time. Now, there are parts, don't get me wrong, there are parts where you can have, you know, the same, if it's a very specific kind of riff, you can have the bass line doing the exact same thing, but oftentimes I find variations to where I can still make a slight difference, and it makes the bass stand out more. The bass tone on the album in general is very low end. It's a very like upright bass sort of tone. I recorded it on my jazz bass that has flat wound strings on it. As a matter of fact, we're going to get into that in a second with the guitars I used on this album. But it has there's a lot of like low end tones in the bass, right? And so the thing is with that is it allowed for a lot of treble and a lot of high mid in the guitar tone, which if you listen to anything that's not metal on that album, you will realize that the guitar tone may sound thin, but it's really just the fact that it is very comfortable in that high mid-range and that high mid-range sort of honky setting, and a lot of the guitar tones on that album sound really honky. Now, if we're talking about the metal songs of that album, I used 2 different plugins for the guitar tones. For the lead tones on Drama Queen and Through Your Ego and The Start of the End, and even the rhythm tones on The End of My Only Friend on the album version, I used the Archetype Petrucci X by Neural DSP, and likewise for the rhythm tones on those songs on Drama Queen, on Through Your Ego, and The Start of the End, I used Archetype Gojira X because they just sounded a lot more chuggier, a lot more thicker, and there was a lot more I can do with that and a lot more I can play around with, and they sounded a lot more like a rhythm tone. The thing is with Archetype Petrucci is, and this is an unofficial key review by the way, Archetype Petrucci is very good for very specific scenarios. It's a very good lead tone. If you hear the lead tone on Drama Queen, the single version, it's very sharp, it cuts through very well, but the rhythm tone, and it's the same plugin on the single version of Drama Queen, you will hear it's very like thin, it's got almost no life into it, and I feel like Archetype Gojira has that life into it, you know? And the other thing I have with Archetype Petrucci is it's generally just a bunch of lead amps. They do have some versatility, they do have a clean amp, they do have an acoustic amp, but I found for the purpose of the songs that I was recording that Archetype Gojira was better for the rhythm. And there's some other notable mentions honorable mentions. I wouldn't say honorable mentions, but just some other things to note. I did use this keyboard. Can I move my head out the way? This keyboard right here to record the strings and the organ that you use. The organ, I did use a plugin for the organ, but I hooked it up through a MIDI cable, so I was playing the organ while I was, tracking the MIDI or whatever. And the same thing with the drums. It was hooked up through MIDI and into the MT Power Kit 2 or whatever it is. I can't remember. I stopped using that plugin. Listen, I love the drum sound for metal. The snare is obnoxiously loud. The only thing I really like is the China cymbal because it fucking hits. And it's like, it's so like, it's thick and it's really, really rich sounding. You know, it's not like really thin or harsh. It's just a good like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And yeah, I don't think you have to be a drummer to understand what I'm talking about, but the biggest thing about recording here was from my last album, TBI. I had a lot of reviews that were given to me that said, you need to work on your performance, you need to work on getting this tight. And let me just say this, Boga Woga, my friend Boga Woga, who I also worked on Through Your Ego with and The Star of the End with, has been a big help as far as like critiquing me on that stuff. He would always, come to me about not just my mixes or whatever. I think I've said this in a video before, critiquing my mixes. You critique my performance. Hey, you need it, that could probably be tracked a lot tighter. That can probably be redone. That could probably be, this, that. And I wouldn't take it harshly. I would be like, okay, well, let me see what I can do. Because as a musician, you have to keep this mindset that you can always improve. Otherwise, you stop improving and you might as well quit music at that point. I mean, that's just how I see it. If I stop learning, I'm going to quit. There's always something to learn, even if you're the best guy in the room, In that case, I've never been the best guy in the room, okay? I try to stay down low because the people that put you up there like that, and they can cut you right down just like that. That's something that BB King said a while ago. But the biggest thing for me was the amount of takes and retakes I did of the same fucking three measure section or 4 measures. Like, I would record things in sections. The thing is with the drums, I think that might be the only thing where I did mostly entire like songs, because the drums were like the last thing I did. And on top of that, I would record the strings or whatever I needed from this keyboard just to enrich in the song. I would record that after I'd done the drums, bass, vocals, and guitars, just so I know where to put it. Because when you add a 5th instrument in to a song, it's getting to the point where you have, we have the metronome, we have the bass that's right above that, they're sort of together. We have the guitar, that's the mid-range sort of instrument that drives the melody, and you have the vocal, which is like the lead, and then the guitar sometimes will come in when the vocal's out and replace its spot, and then you'll have probably 4 or 5 instruments at one time playing already, but you have to find where to put this. And so what I did was I EQ'd the hell out of the strings on this album, and I made them sound really sharp and really thin, and I think that actually helped a lot. And you'll find it especially in stuff off of side 2 that's the case. The big thing I did go into during the recording process of this album, I started recording it in November of 23. As far as like drafting ideas, Drama Queen was the first song I ever did record, and that's why I recorded it and released it first as a single. The biggest thing that I learned was how to mix. Now, mixing was never really my thing, and I will say, looking back on the entire album, the final master, it's still not the best mix that I can do today. I have already been recording stuff for some other stuff in the future, some more albums, some more singles, whatever. And I will say it's substantially better than Times of Trouble, or at least notably better. And but the thing is I learned so much about so many different plugins. I used to think, man, fuck plugins, dude. Fuck plugins. Fuck all this digital shit. I don't want to have to learn how to program, but really, if I'm the only one doing this stuff and I don't want to spend a bunch of money that I don't have on mixing and engineers and everything like that, then you better learn how to do it yourself, otherwise it's going to sound like shit. And I'm pretty sure I learned that well enough from the beginning and from TBI, TBI wasn't the worst sounding record, obviously, but there were some really bad mixing choices that I made in that album, and I barely mixed it at all. I didn't understand what mixing was. I just slapped an EQ on everything, and I said, all right, we're gonna raise the bass and we're gonna raise the kick drum by this much, and then we're gonna raise the lead guitar and the treble in, and high shelf at 5k hertz, and then we're gonna call it quits. you know. Um, and so you have a very harsh sounding album from that point of view. The one mistake I will say I did make on Times of Trouble was in some parts the vocals are too loud, and some parts the guitars don't cut in as much as they should. I don't think it's to the point where it's like, you know, you need to go back to the mixing stage and reflect and see what you did and change it. Obviously, if it weren't to that case, then I wouldn't be releasing Times of Trouble right now. Maybe I would, because I did, you know, announce it 8 months in advance. But I definitely wouldn't be at this stage I am now. Some things you just have to accept and move on. At one point, I was just going through the school year. I was coming back home, and this is the same thing with the beginning in TBI. I was coming home, and I was recording, and I was doing nothing but that. I wasn't doing my homework. I wasn't doing anything. This is through freshman and sophomore year that I was doing this. And you know, I would just come home, I would record for hours. I would be tracking. I would be on the phone with Boga Woga on Discord on my PC here, and we would just be, you know, talking about, oh, what should I do here? You know, he was very much a very good second pair of ears for this album. Even if he only contributed to 2 songs, he was still a good pair of ears to have on hand, because he knew a lot more about mixing than I did. And, you know, he has a lot more of a perfectionist attitude when it comes to music. Me personally, if it's sort of sloppy but it works, I'll keep it. But Boga Woga's like, yeah, no, every freaking pick stroke has to be right. It has to be exactly how it, you know, it should sound, you know, and all these other things. And I can learn to appreciate that. You know, I'm not one who likes really technical stuff. I'm not one who really takes all that much out of getting every single note right, because, you know, I'm not a classical neo shred guitarist. You know, I don't do that stuff. I'm a blues player, and sometimes sloppiness is what gets the emotions out. But I will say that it was very helpful to at least have that and understand where I am, because you have to be humble as a musician in order to make something. I believe that is a truth that I have found out myself. So a lot of this mixing and everything, what it really taught me was where everything was put in the mix, where everything belongs in the mix. You have, you know, you'll have, like I said earlier, you'll have your kick drum and your bass, you'll have your guitars, you'll have your vocals, you'll have your lead guitars that are just separate but equal. And some songs like, you know, Metro Blues, or some songs like, you know, just any blues song in the album, it's call and response. You'll see it, I'll go through the first verse, I'll just be singing. The second verse, I'll add some little guitar licks in there, right? Or maybe I'll do it first verse and second verse, and then the guitar licks will get progressively, you know, faster, or they'll get, you know, more intense as the song goes on, leading up into a solo. But that's not really a formula. That's just how people do it in blues, you know? That's just a way that I see it fit in blues. I could have had a saxophone player here, but I didn't. There actually is saxophone on a few songs in this album. I believe there's 3 songs that have saxophone, and it's Can I Wish, Slave in My Own Home, and Someday. Now, if you've heard Slave in My Own Home from live videos on this channel, then you'll know what it sounds like. It does sound different on the record, though. I will say, from the performance that I did Wednesday at Green Oaks Tavern a couple Wednesdays ago, it's completely different. It's almost like a completely different song, and that's why I feel like the beauty of it is because I don't play the same song twice. Another thing to note, that saxophone was a VST. That was the only thing that I programmed on this entire album, through VST and through a plugin or whatever. I think it was called Saxophia or something like that. I can't remember the plugin's name, but it was a free VST plugin that had like 4 different samples of, you know, you had like your baritone sax, your tenor, your alto, and your soprano sax, and that was about it. And I mostly just used the tenor and the alto sax, you know, just for my understanding of you know, jazz and blues, and that's usually what people use now. I have heard records like Albert King where they use, you know, Barry sax. Like I'll Play the Blues for You, I believe, has a Barry sax on it. But I stuck to mostly tenor sax and mostly alto sax because that's where I knew, that's where I was familiar with as far as like, you know, the sounds of it and what I wanted to get out of it. Now, all mixing tips aside here, take any of these with a grain of salt. Because, again, I'm not the greatest musician, nor will I ever be. And I know progress is inevitable, but I will never try and hold myself up to that standard to be the greatest. I just want to be better than I was yesterday, right? Let's talk into some guitars I used for recording the album. times of trouble. Now, I'm not going to get into everything. I'm not going to get into the dire specifics of every single guitar I used. Most of these guitars you've seen before. I will say a lot of things on this album, I use similar recording techniques. I would mic up the amp, my Boss Katana with the SM57 directly in the center of the cone, so I can get the most frequencies out of it. I didn't have a secondary mic or a room mic on it, which I kind of regret about it. In other cases, I'm like, it sounds fine the way it is. It is good for what it is. That's another thing that I've taken into account recently, is getting a secondary mic for recording amps specifically. Here's the bass that I used for this album. Now, you guys, if you've seen my gear reviews, I did gear review this exact bass, and I did use it for all of Times of Trouble. And it does have flat wounds on it. It plays very well. One thing I would like to do is build a bass similar to this 5-string, and I want it to be fretless, because I feel like that would be something insanely interesting and insanely relevant to my style. I mean, I used to be an upright bass player. You can see by the way I'm holding it. I mean, this is how you used to have to hold, the upright bass as far as like the finger positions, and I always have a space between the middle and the first finger here. But I love this bass. It serves the purpose that it needs to serve. And it sounds great on the album. It plays well. It's very low action. It's actually very it's very smooth playing experience from when I first got out of the box. And I specifically wanted flat wound strings for that jazz bass sort of sound. And even when I have the treble on 10, it still gives me that really warm, fuzzy sort of, I like to associate it with, I call it the autumn bass sound. Which is more just like a warm, fuzzy sort of jazz sort of tone. I say autumn probably because of autumn leaves, but it's that sort of a it sounds so much different than round wound strings, and I can't even just begin to describe it. Maybe one day I'll make another video of a bass cover. I haven't done one in a while, but I might do another bass cover one day, or a bass playthrough, which I'm investing in doing for this album. Just so the familiarity with the songs can be established, because I'm not one who records guitar lesson videos. I'm not like Marty Schwartz or any of those guys, but I do love to play through my own songs and put it on here, just so people can at least reference that if they ever do want to learn my songs or play stuff, because I'm not one who's like, no, don't look at what I'm playing, don't look at what I'm playing. I love that. I love it when people want to learn my music, because it makes me feel good, and it makes me think that I did a good job. Now let's talk about the two main guitars. We've all seen this one, right? This is my baby. This is my pride and joy, my Tangerine. And I will say this guitar has gone through a couple of mods at this point. I have replaced the pots, the volume pots, because they were really scratchy, and you were able to hear that on TBI at some points, and at some points you were able to hear it on this album, I think. Although I may have just retracked some of those things. But I love this guitar. It plays so well. It's my best playing guitar right now, and I love it to death. This is also the most expensive thing I own. It is a 1959 Epiphone Les Paul Standard 2022 reissue. And it's a Sweetwater exclusive limited edition, as you can see right here on the back. Does that read right? Limited edition? That's probably going to read it backwards. I love this thing. I've changed the strap buttons. These are the Dunlop strap lock buttons. They're honestly the best strap buttons, and the only strap buttons you will ever need. I don't like Fender strap locks because of the extra piece I have to carry with me. It's pretty messy sometimes, and that's why I put it on my Ibanez, which is my sort of like, I'm not even playing that guitar anymore. I'm about to like deconstruct it and rebuild it into a whole different instrument. But this guitar I use on pretty much every song. Used on all the metal songs, most of the blues songs except for Metro Blues. And I'm trying to think, is there anyone that I didn't use this guitar on besides Metro Blues? I don't think so. I think I've used this guitar in every single song, at least for rhythm or lead. What I like to do for this album, what I found a lot of interest in, was switching off rolls of. Since I was using two different guitars this album, here's the other one I was using. which I didn't really use much in TBI, but this is my first guitar that I've ever owned. This is I mean, you can tell by the difference between the headstock and the neck, how freaking dirty this thing is, and it literally looks like it's been played for 50 years. It's like one of those relics that you buy from a Fender custom shop. But I've modded the hell out of this guitar, so much so that like it's starting to fall apart. And so the last days of this guitar were recorded during the Times of Trouble sessions. I mean, the bridge, I can't intonate the bridge anymore. I've already screwed up. Everything here is like rusted and corroded and everything. The pickup magnets are even getting rusty, if you can see that. This is a pick guard that I changed out about 3 years ago. This neck is the same neck. I've never changed it. I put lock-in tuners on this thing. I actually got this guitar for $109 from Glary.com. This is the first guitar I ever owned, and it sounds great. It plays great. I've like forcefully set it up to play great. It has this really freaking chunky neck, which is something that I have been accustomed to, and the reason why I like 50s necks better than 60s necks is because of this guitar. And this guitar has the chunkiest neck out of any guitar I've ever played, more than any 50s or 60s neck. I guess they just make them really freaking huge, but I like putting my thumb over the neck, so I found it as a challenge, and it improved my dexterity just because of how freaking big this neck was. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but in comparison to the body, it's a pretty freaking big neck. It's a thick neck, and I have to wrap my hand around it to really dig in. But it's like any other Strat, 5 positions. The weird thing about this is that I wired, whenever I put it in the pick guard, it was either me or it was the manufacturer who wired this weirdly. Because I do remember having to switch out the pots a while back, the tone pots, because they were not working. I either wired, I think I wired the bridge tone pot nowhere. I don't think it's wired to anything, because it doesn't work in any position here. It doesn't work for the middle. It doesn't work at all. This is the only tone knob that works, and it only affects positions positions this 5, 4, 3, and 2. And so every position except for position 1, which is just the humbucker, has tone knob control. So what I like to do is I like to have my tone knob at about 5 or 6 for these pickups, and then I'll go right here, and it's so much louder regardless if I use the tone knob or not, because it's a humbucker and it's higher output. But it also has so much more treble compared to the other pickup configurations of the other settings on the tone switch, which is perfect because I can bring this to a gig without any pedals, without anything. Really, the only pedal I would say you need is a boost pedal for most blues gigs, but I don't even need that, because this is just, it's almost wired like a Les Paul, where you can switch it and it has such a drastic difference in the sound. It was the same, similarly what I did with Tangerine was I just used the 2 pickups as, as it says here, as a rhythm and a treble pickup. I would have the volume on about 7 or 8 for the neck pickup, and the tone on about 7 or 8. Then I would have the bridge volume and tone at 10, or sometimes a tone at like 3.5, so I can get that really like more of that woman sort of tone, when it comes to leads. But I learned how to use the tone knobs during the sessions of making this album. I think I just bumped the guitar. That's alright. This guitar has so many dents. I don't know if you can see that there's like scratches on there. You can barely see it. There's like scratches that I made because I thought I was supposed to go over the body in steel wool. Yeah, so that's how stupid I was. That was 5 years ago. And we don't talk about that. The guitars I use in this album are actually a big part of how it sounds. And this will be the last time, is the only time that I use this guitar pretty actively on an album, and it will be the last time as well, because I am building the DT parts caster. Well, technically it's already built, but I still have to set it up. I still have a lot of things I need to do before I can play it and make it sound good. I haven't even plugged it into an amp yet. That's the crazy part. I've tested out the electronics. They all work good. There's almost no hum, no nothing. It's actually a lot less hum than I thought it would be. But this guitar, like I said, is falling apart. It's developed a grounding issue, lots of buzz, from the audio jack. The bridge, again, is falling apart. I can't seem to get this truss rod to go any lower, or put any relief on it, so I just stopped messing with it. I think the neck is actually up-bowed, because I left it for a long time, you know, without playing it, without strings on. But it's a great playing guitar, and you know, for what it's worth, it has a lot of sentimental value to me, because I, you know, learned everything on it. You know, Green Day, Nirvana, all the other stuff that the beginners learn, and it has a very good tone, I will say. I've used it a lot live recently, and the one of the things I like about it is when you're on the neck pickup, and the specific tone preset I have with the Boss Guitar that I used for Times of Trouble, and for Metro Blues specifically, you can hear this sound in the studio, but it's a very spanky very spanky neck pickup sound. It's a very, like, that's the only word I can really use to describe it. It's like, lots of treble, lots of high mids, that sort of thing. And I don't even have to be in the bridge pickup to really get that spank out of it. Like, I can use the neck pickup, and you know, I'll play a clip here from, when was it, like, a few weeks ago, a month ago maybe, that I played Voodoo Child with Paul Ramirez, and it's actually a clip that I posted on Instagram, of the spanky ass tone I got from the guitar itself. Anyways, I love this guitar. You know, it has a lot of sentimental value to me, and I think it's time that I retire it. As a matter of fact, pretty soon. I'm gonna retire it, and I'm just gonna hang it up on a wall or put it in a frame or something. Or I want it to be viewed, you know, as like a sort of a symbol for my beginnings, you know, because I didn't come from a lot of money. I still don't have a lot of money, you know. I don't buy expensive things. And this is a humble beginning here. This is $100 Strat that I basically played the hell out of. The action was like this high off the fretboard when I got the guitar, but I still freaking my way through it all. So, you know, it's a testament to my hard work, and I think this is something that maybe one day I can give to my kid and say, hey, if you want to play this, you know, you can make it work. But this guitar is at this point 6 years old, pretty sure. It was made the year before I got it, and I got it in 2020, December of 2020. It was made about a year before that, sitting in the Glary factory. This guitar has seen its fair share of shows, its fair share of studio sessions. You know, I've done so much with this guitar. I've spent more hours than anything else. I've spent, you know, my guitar career, I've spent just sitting on my bed, unplugged, practicing with this thing, especially during the TBI era. You know, it was all I had was this guitar on my back. I didn't have an amp or anything like that, so I would just sit there unplugged and play it all damn day, you know. And I would sit there, and you would just hear me. You wouldn't actually hear me from outside the door, because I would just be playing these little silent licks or these Nirvana songs, and I would just be singing to myself or, you know, to my friends on an Xbox party. And so that's how I spent a lot of my time with this guitar. The neck had a satin finish. I didn't sand it off. I think my hands did, because it was a very light finish, and I can't really feel anything on it now, no matter how I look at it. The body is like a nice sort of gloss finish. It's very factory coated. Actually, I will commend Glary for the paint job it's done. Some spots look worn. That's just because I've literally worn through it. Like this right here is almost it's almost matte because I've just worn through it. You can see there's not much shine to it on pretty much this entire side of the guitar, unless you look here. This sort of corner is just like pretty much buckle rash and everything. That's sort of worn through the first coat of paint. Spent a lot of time talking about this guitar, but I really do love this thing. And I feel like it's going to be a good thing to look back at. The DT Parts Caster, I will make in a completely different video about that, but I think that's all for the guitars. So let's go on to the next thing. Plans for the future. I think I've already gone over this a little bit. We're just going to say this. After Times of Trouble comes out, I'm going to be showing my ass off. Whoa. No. That's not what I said. Quiet. No. Stop laughing. I'm going to be touring my ass off, showing my ass off. Yeah, I'm going to be touring my ass off all across Houston, wherever I can go. I'm going to just play those songs, whether it's by myself or with a band. I'm going to be playing those songs, promoting the hell out of them, selling CDs, trying to get my name out there more, because at the end of the day, that's all you can do. And I want people to hear this album. I actually want people to hear this album. This is not just something I made for myself. I will be mad if it flops after the first 2 weeks. About 30 people have pre-saved it, and the pre-save link is in the description, along with my other links. If you want to pre-save it, I highly encourage it, because there's only 5 days until the album comes out, and it means the most to me. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Times of Trouble is the Next Greatest Thing by Dango, Torres, me. And I cannot wait to see you guys on November 7th in my Spotify streaming numbers, or whatever streaming numbers, because it's available on all platforms. I can't wait to see you guys on November 8th at the album release party. And I'm excited. I have lots of hopes for this album and a lot of fears, but I think they are overcome by the hopes that I have for this album and the faith that I have in the music that I have made. So, subscribe, like, comment, check out some of my stuff if you're new, and we're always welcoming new family members. We are close to 500 subscribers. I'm not much of a YouTuber guy anymore myself, but that's pretty much revenue for me at this point. So subscribe if you haven't. My name is Dango Torres. I will see you guys